Hey, Eddie.
Hey, Tammy. Hey, and everyone, welcome to another edition of Getting to the Other Side, where what we're doing is we're helping couples to navigate that road to recovery. It is that program where we're trying to help the people who are struggling with a sex addiction, as well as their partners who are dealing with the betrayal. We hope this is a place that offers healing, forgiveness, and the hope for a new beginning. So today, what we're going to be talking about is a very interesting topic is how does attachment disorders impact sexual and pornography addiction? So you folks who've been following me for a while, you understand that I believe that childhood trauma and neglect is at the root of sexual and porn addiction. In fact, at the root of all addictions. And that neglect, all right, would be as simple as parents not monitoring a child who spends hours on their computer looking at porn locked in their bedroom. Okay, that could be a sense of neglect. So therefore, neglect and trauma can lead to attachment disorder. So what's an attachment? Is attachment described as an emotional bond that preserves the closeness between a child and a small number of caregivers who are responsible for comforting, supporting, and nurturing and protecting that child. If a caregiver is available and dependable, the child's going to develop a very healthy attachment. When the opposite occurs and a caregiver is not available or is undependable, a child's going to struggle to create that emotional connection and bond. They're going to struggle to be able to identify and express their emotion. This is called an attachment disorder. So before I dive into attachment, let me just talk a little bit more about childhood trauma and neglect and its impact. The early developmental years of a child's life really lays the groundwork for what's going to determine uh, whether an adult can establish uh, nurturing and healthy relationships, or they're going to struggle to bond in a healthy manner with other people. And again, I believe that understanding early childhood development is a key component to helping you understand why a sex or porn addiction has developed. So there's 5 areas in which a child needs to feel secure during these early developmental years. One, they have to have a connection with that caregiver. Therefore, that avoids the loss of, being detached. Okay, they need what's called attunement. Attunement is when a child has the ability to express their needs, especially during time when they're emotionally distressed. And this is where a lot of problems occur that I see in the men that I work with who are dealing with addiction. They don't know how to handle emotional distress because nobody was there during that attunement stage for them. The third area is just trust. A child needs to feel safe and to feel like there's no sense of manipulation by self-serving caregivers. The fourth is autonomy, in which a child develops a sense of independence apart from the caregiver, and they don't feel smothered or overly protective. They feel like they can go off and they can do things on their own and they'll be safe. And then the final area is love and sexuality. At this stage occurred between the ages of about 4 and 6, and later again on the onset of puberty. Now, difficulties begin here when a parent rejects, shames, or punishes a child's emergent sexual expressions and curiosity. As adults, they are going to have a very difficult time maintaining a close relationship and connection with others. So the issues resulting in trauma and neglect in those early developmental years can lead to some very severe impairments of cognitive and emotional development. So what kind of trauma or neglect are we talking about? Well, I mentioned one to you before. Kid who's just nobody's paying attention to him. However, it's like, well, what if a parent had a very serious illness or a parent dies? I mean, that was in my case. My father died when I was 5 and my mother had a nervous breakdown. We all got shipped out to different relatives for more than a year, people I didn't even know. That developed an attachment disorder for me. Um, what about the caregiver's own attachment disorders? There are times when parents, they don't know how to bond with a child because they don't know how to bond, period. A prolonged separation from one or more of their parents. Caregivers who are just not emotionally available. They don't know how to share their emotions and things. Too much isolation, as I mentioned with that first example. A divorce in the family, a troubled sibling. I've seen cases before where you get the older siblings, they're in trouble with the law school, and then the younger one kind of lost in the shuffle because the parents have to put all the resources to those kids, whether they're battling drug addictions, alcohol addiction, whatever it may be. And it could be even the child's own health problems that are going on. So again, that's just a handful of potential traumas or neglect that a child may face. And the thing is that many of these are suppressed, and they've been so for years and decades. They don't really even know that that lies there underneath the surface, but yet they're triggered constantly today in the present day and age. So unresolved childhood pain points, are carried into our adulthood, and they leave individuals to struggle with problems such as mood disorders, especially depression and anxiety, addictive behaviors. Sometimes we see personality disorders for people, borderline personality disorders. We wind up seeing self-esteem problems, dissociation, where people can just not even be present, even though they're there. I'll never forget, I had a client who told me once a story that her husband and her, they went to a wedding, and it was a very small wedding. There wasn't many people. It was like 25, 30 people. But yet they had an open bar and they had a barmaid there. And her husband went up to the bar to get a drink. And he sat there for like almost an hour talking to this bartender, this woman up there. And even the people at the table were like wondering, like, what's this guy doing? He was totally oblivious to the wedding itself. He was just so zoned in here. Other issues could be indecisiveness, just can't make that decision right, because I always wonder if I'm going to be doing it wrong. The inability to emotionally connect. So that just names a few of the issues that come up. And in addition, clinical studies have suggested that early childhood trauma and neglect can result in permanent changes in brain structure, especially involving the hippocampus and the amygdala. Now, the amygdala, that's located in a part of the brain that's called the limbic system. You didn't know we were going to be doing science today, did you? But part of it is in the limbic system. And the amygdala, think of it as a thermostat. And what it does, it regulates emotional pain and pleasure. Never lets it get too out of control. Well, people who've gone through these type of trauma and neglect, their thermostat's broken. The amygdala is just out of whack. So therefore, when it comes to the pain point, it goes way to the extreme. And when they're seeking out pleasure, it's the same thing. They go way to the extreme. If this is not enough pleasure, I gotta have more. So that's part of what's going on there. It's the amygdala really being overactive. And so therefore your emotional pleasure or your pain just runs amok. Studies have also demonstrated that being raised in an environment that's not secure can lead to an increase in stress hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is it's the body's like built-in alarm system, and it's the main stress hormone that we have. It works with certain parts of the brain to control your mood, your motivation, your fear. So again, when trauma and stress are introduced early into a child's life, the cortisol levels are very difficult to control as an adult because the body has become accustomed to creating these high levels of stress hormone. So the cortisol is also responsible for the body fight or flight. You guys have all heard that. Either I'm going to sit there and I'm going to battle it out, or I'm going to run away. So if you think about it, that's one of the reasons why so many people who have a sex or porn addiction, they either tend to withdraw or they become very defensive when they face a conflict. It's all because of the neurohormones in the brain and how they're either acting or not acting the way they should. Whenever a mother or a caregiver successfully soothes a child, what they're doing is they are regulating that child's nervous system. And that's very, very important. When the regulation process between the caregiver and a child is disrupted because of trauma or neglect, the child is not going to develop that core capacity to self-regulate themselves. They just don't have the tools to be able to deal with the pain. Or if a caregiver has poor self-regulating skills themselves, okay, they don't know how to control their emotions, so they're not going to be able to regulate a child's nervous system. It makes sense, doesn't it? And that's what we see in many cases. So what this leaves us is a child who is dealing with emotional distress and is not being given any coping mechanisms that are needed to manage that pain. So now we have this stressed out kid, right? Well, no, because what happens is the kid is not going to stay in that negative state. He or she are going to figure out a way to protect themselves from feeling this pain. And because, and you guys have heard me say this before, because they have so few worldly experiences and because they're more emotionally driven in their thought process, they're going to come up with just one logical conclusion. How do I deal with this emotional turmoil? I won't think about it. That's what they're going to come up with. And how do they not do that? Well, what they do that they distract themselves. And there are many ways for them to remove themselves from that toxic environment that they're feeling. And at some point, the people that we're talking about, they stumble across sex and they discover this is the ultimate of all distractions. You can't get a better distraction than sex. It provides a sense of soothing, comfort that they're just not getting and finding in their surrounding environments. So let's move on to what I wanted to really talk about today. I could talk a lot, can't I, Tammy? And that's attachment disorders, okay? Well, again, an attachment disorder affects an individual's ability to identify and to express their emotion, as well as to bond in a healthy manner with other people. Those who use sex to soothe themselves, for the most part, suffer chronic mood dysregulation. That's what I was talking to you about before. They don't know how to regulate their mood. They struggle to find the relief from the underlying issues such as anxiety or depression because they didn't have that constant comfort and nurturing from caregivers. And then so therefore they turn to sex, which provides that temporary sense of relief for them, for their own internal dysregulation. But as the pattern continues, it becomes much more difficult to stop because they found a go-to. This gets me to calm down and to relax. We hear that constantly from people who've been locked in this addiction. There are numerous attachment disorders. And it seems like clinicians are always constantly coming up with new terminology to describe them. It's like, you know what, you go to buy salad dressing and there's just not the 4 different flavors. There's 40 different flavors because they have to add everything else into it. It takes you forever. They're doing the same thing with attachment disorder. But I'm old school, so I'm going to stick with just 4. There's 4 basics. These are the ones I learned, and these are the ones that still resonate mostly with everyone. The first is that secure attachment style. This is an individual that grew up in an environment where they were taught how to identify and regulate their emotions. Therefore, they were able to build strong connections with other members of the family. The likelihood of someone who struggles with a sex or porn addiction having a secure attachment style is very, very low. If not, as Tammy just pointed out, 0. You're just not going to find it. I haven't found one yet. Now, that doesn't mean these people may not occasionally look at pornography, but they probably don't have such an issue with it that is spilling over into other areas of their lives. Now, that, along with their ability to strongly bond and attach with the loved ones, what that does is that makes their risk of stepping outside the marriage very, very low. The second attachment is called ambivalent. That's what, again, I learned. It's now referred more to as an anxious. So an anxious attachment, an ambivalent attachment. And that's driven by our fear of abandonment. So these are individuals whose parents vacillated between nurturing and being responsive to being insensitive and emotionally unavailable. So you got one or the other. And therefore, it left these kids very confused and insecure because they didn't know what kind of treatment was coming. One day, mom's loving and caring, and the next day, not. In fact, not even day, it could be minutes. You know, 1 minute she got me, I'm clinging to her and she's happy, and the next minute she's pushing me away. And therefore, they come to distrust the parent. They become clingy, desperate for connection. And as adults, they crave that closeness. They want that intimacy, but they're also very insecure about relationships because they don't know what's coming. They also feel very unworthy of love from people. So they believe the best way to get their needs met is to cling to a partner. But this sense of closeness and the sense that they are so needy scares a lot of people away, because they just can't take the sense of being smothered or somebody blowing up their phone because you're 10 minutes late. Where are you? What's going on? So that's the second attachment. The third attachment disorder is what we call avoidant attachment. These kids had caregivers who just were not emotionally available. So the child needs to learn to suppress that natural desire to seek out the parent when they're for comfort, when they're frightened, sad, or in pain. They can't go there because they're not going to get anything back. Their worldview is basically the people who love you are not reliable. So they basically just shut down their emotions, and they also shut down the need for other people. So not feeling means no emotional pain. That's their worldview. If I don't feel, I don't hurt. So as adults, they keep up this wall. There's a wall out here, and therefore they won't allow anyone in here. What they're going to do is they're going to love from afar. Because if I let somebody in here, I give you the power to hurt me. I can't let you this close because I know you're going to disappoint me. I know you're not going to live up to your part of the bargain. So don't worry, I can love you from here. You'll be fine. And in most cases, that's not really fine, unless of course you get two avoidants who are engaged in a relationship, which does happen, and therefore they can pretty much manage a lot better. So anyway, as I said, they learn to love from afar, but they never really truly bond. A large percentage, and I mean a large percentage of sex and porn addicts are going to suffer from the avoidant attachment. And I'll share something with you in a moment about that. Their inability to connect, this is the very ironic part of it. Their inability to connect leaves them with this longing to be filled. There's this void that needs to be filled. You know what that void is? It's emotional connection. Yeah, I know, all right? They just don't know it. They don't know that's what they're doing. So therefore, they develop relationships based on physical intimacy and touching. And that's how they show someone that they care and love. And that's how they feel cared and loved. But it's never enough for them because the real emotional intimacy that they desire is not there. And as I tell my clients all the time, I go, you know what? It's not your fault because you wouldn't know emotional intimacy if they hit you in the face. And they have to learn that. That's a skill that they need to learn. And then this brings us to the final attachment style. That's called disorganized. And this attachment is called when parent behavior is unpredictable, and it leaves a child feeling unsafe and their needs are unmet. Parents who are in this environment, they react by being very frightening to the child, or they are very panicked themselves. They're frightened in the moment of stress. So the child is just always feeling that there's a state of chaos going on. Um, and the parents may not even act in ways that really make sense. They may be very erratic and confusing with their behavior. And a child just doesn't understand how to deal with it. It was like, for example, one of my clients who her mother would take her with her when she was 6, 7 years old to go to her boyfriend's house. Well, her mother was married, okay, and lived at home with dad. And she'd take her to her boyfriend's house. And she'd leave her on the sofa to watch TV while her and her boyfriend went into the bedroom, okay? That's erratic behavior. And so therefore now as adults, these individuals, they struggle to self-soothe in healthy ways. And they are very fearful of intimate relationships. Again, they long for that connection, but when it arrives, okay, the stress and fear that they feel is going to cause them to act erratically. And what they're going to do is drive their partner away. Think of it as pull and push, okay? They pull somebody in because they have this strong desire for attachment. But once you get too close, they're going to be pushing you away. And a lot of times it's going to be done in a passive aggressive way. It's going to be done subconsciously. People look at that and they say, what are you doing? You're sabotaging your relationship. It's because the person's too close and they're just worried, I have to push you off now. The fear and anxiety takes over. And they see that person just the same way they saw their caregiver. And that is someone who is a threat to their safety and their emotional well-being. This type of attachment disorder, it drives the partner crazy because you don't know where you stand at any moment in the relationship. 1 minute they're embracing you and loving you, and the next minute they couldn't get you far enough away from there. So as I said, I'm of the belief that a large majority of individuals who have a sex or porn addiction also deal with an attachment disorder. In fact, there's one empirical study that found that individuals diagnosed with sexual addiction commonly have significant levels of discomfort with closeness, and really it's like 95% that display some sort of an attachment disorder. What's also interesting in this study was the most prevalent attachment disorder among this group was the avoidant, with almost 68% of them being diagnosed with that type of attachment disorder. It is huge. Why are we talking about this today? We're talking about this again, so it gives you a better understanding, one, from the person who's been betrayed, of what could be going on with your partner, the person who betrayed you, but at the same time, for those who are locked in this addiction, who don't quite understand why do I do what I do, this is giving you some more insights and tools. You need to be going back and looking at early childhood development, what goes on at those very critical stages, as well as the attachment styles. Where do you fall in that spectrum? And then being able to do the work to get through the attachment. As I told you, I have an avoidant attachment disorder, okay? It's still there, okay? At the wall, I learned to bring my wall in. The wall doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. And sometimes I push it out a little bit when I feel threatened. But for the most part, I moved it in here. But I had to work at that. It took time and energy because the fear of, oh my gosh, somebody, if I get them this close, they're gonna hurt me. And it's not reality. That environment doesn't exist. What happened to me when I was younger, that was not people who were doing it intentionally. It was just circumstances. But me as a child, my inner child didn't understand that. All he knows is dad's not around, mom's not around, and I'm with a bunch of strangers. So what happened to the family nucleus? And that became, therefore you start to distrust. And you say, okay, you know what? I can't trust people anymore with that. So anyway, that's all I got for you today, this week, Tammy.
I hit the wrong button.
I
hit the wrong button.
You're never at a loss for words. I don't know what's going on.
I hit the wrong button. Technology today. But well, I was thinking about the attachment. So at Seeking Integrity Los Angeles, we talk about the intimacy disorder, which is an attachment disorder. And I didn't know the statistic, but I'm not at all surprised that, the avoidant. And, when, sexual intimacy is not what the sex addicts are typically having. They're having body part sex, and orgasm sex. And so there isn't intimacy, because intimacy involves vulnerability and really connecting with another person. And there's so much, there's so much of the silos of, compartmentalization, so to protect, just like you were talking about, to protect because the world isn't safe, these people aren't safe, and I was thinking too, there's so many, hurt and broken people that have children that are, and I think a lot of them are doing the best that they possibly can, but they're so broken and don't get the help to be able to do things differently. So I think, for the people that are coming to, thank you for being here. First of all, we've got some questions we'll get to in just a moment, but, you're looking to do things differently. And so, for you, as people, as, partners, as, as parents, you get to change, the narrative. You can do things differently and start changing, how it goes. So it isn't just a generation of broken, parenting the next generation of broken. So I think this is a fundamental change. I love that you shared, here I am avoidant, I've learned, but I can still pull back into that. But you've got the awareness to be able to go, I'm going into that, and that isn't going to serve me, and step into being different. That's what we learn. You talked about learning tools, and I share this all the time with people. I talk to lots of people, and a lot of big trade partners, and I'm like, why did he do this to hurt me? And I'm like, it wasn't intentional, and it's not an excuse, but this is a broken person who doesn't have the tools to be able to do things differently. They can learn, but it takes time and qualified help and things.
The thing is this, that people think, okay, I'm going to do my trauma work, and that, okay, then I'll just be fine, and I'll leave it in the past, and it's gone. It doesn't go away.
No.
I mean, what we're trying to do is desensitize it. Try to make it so it's less painful. And when it does come up, as you mentioned just a moment ago, Tammy, it's being mindful of, oh, it's back. Okay, why is it back? What's going on today that's kind of triggered these feelings in me once again? So I can go through, I can sit with it for a little while. It's not going to crash me. Deal with it, and then put it to wise mind. So I deal with the feeling, and then I rationalize, okay, what's really going on here? And I had an unbelievable experience. I won't share it now, but it was an incredible experience in church with my wife, and it was about my abandonment disorder. And I was like going out of my mind in this service about it. I'm not going to get into that. We don't have the time. But it's going to pop up. And that was something that was almost 50 years ago, after I've even done my work and all. So yeah, it's the work is good. It's needed, but it's not the cure all. The cure all is to be aware, to be cognitive, to be mindful of it, to sit with the pain when you have to, but then to go to rational thinking when you have to.
I'm dying to know that story. And I'll share just real quick, and then we'll go on too, but it's ongoing work. I've been in recovery a long time, and this weekend, I was struggling, not with, I wasn't going to act out or anything, but just emotionally struggling. I was feeling like the world was happening to me and all of this kind of stuff. And my husband, bless his heart, said, maybe you need to call your therapist. And I did, like I know to do that. So I had an appointment with her yesterday, and she gave me some more tools. And so I implemented it and all of that, and I feel nothing in the outside world changed. I feel so much different because I'm tapped back into tools that are helpful
Correct.
for me.
Absolutely. We lose our focus. Okay, quick. I'm going to share the story. We only have 5 people. So my wife and I, we go to church. We only live about 10 minutes from the church. And she likes to walk in just as the music playing. I want to get there like 10 minutes early. I want to say hello to everybody, this and that. I want to read what's the sermon of the day. Well, there's this one particular day, she's going to meet our daughter for lunch after church. So she said, hey, you know what, let's drive separate. I'm like, yay, this is great. So I get there, I'm sitting there in church. First song played. They played 3 worship songs to begin. First song comes up, praising God. No Terry. Okay. Second song comes up, no Terry. Midway through the 3rd song, all of a sudden, a body brushes by me, and I know it's my wife, but I don't see her because I'm trying to stay in the moment. So she sits down, and after the music's over, we sit down. And when we sit down, I had such disdain for this woman. I wanted to shove her all the way down the pew. And I'm sitting there saying, what the heck is this? Wait a second, I can't think about this. I can't process it now. I got to pay attention to the worship and what's going on. I'm trying to pay attention to the worship. It's not really working very well. Then she put her hand on my knee, and I started to cringe. I was like, oh, I can't take this. All right, stay calm, stay calm. Long story short, we get to the end of the service. She gets up, she gives me a peck on the cheek. Said, hey, I got to run to meet Chelsea. I'm like, go. She runs off. I go to my car, and I'm sitting there, and I'm going, kid, go, what in the world is going on? What are you doing? I don't understand this. We don't hate our wife. I love my wife. But I don't get it. I'm sitting there. I'm all by myself. I'm all by myself. Oh, when I was about 7, my mom started sending me off to church. And the church was just up the hill. And she sent me by myself. So I went to church every day by myself for years. And I would sit there. And as I looked around at all these people, what did I see? Families.
Yeah.
And then you'd have people coming up to you and say, oh, little boy, where's your mommy and daddy? Don't know what to say. You're just sitting there. You're not saying anything. You're so embarrassed. You're so humiliated. And it goes on week after week after week. And so anyway, I had not thought about that thing in about 50 years. So now all of a sudden I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, okay, all right, that makes sense. So she comes in late. You're feeling a sense of abandonment there. But wait a minute, what, she came in late. What's the big deal? And why such a hatred toward her? You know what? I mean, it just, oh my gosh. My wife didn't come in and sit next to me. Do you guys know who came and sat next to me? My mother. And it was like, you got to be kidding me. After all these years, you now are going to sit here in service with me today? You get away from me. So that led me to think, okay, I got more mommy issues I have to take care of. So I started doing some journaling a couple of days later. And guess what? I forgot all about it. That day was my mother's birthday. My mother died when she was about 62. Oh, wow. She died of breast cancer. That would have been her birthday. I forgot all about it. Who did not forget about it?
Yeah.
My inner child. My inner child didn't forget. He would remember her mom. And the fact that I didn't see my wife's face when she came by, it was like, there's mom. So anyway, that's the story.
Oh, wow.
See,
Thanks
even
for
after
sharing
all that work, even with all that work, see, things still pop up.
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine if I hadn't done my work and now my wife is heading off to lunch, I got hours by myself. Ooh, bad situation. Bad situation.
But I also think these opportunities come up when we're ready to deal with them. You know, like the stuff that I've had to deal with in the last few years is not stuff that I could have dealt with early on.
True.
So it's a progression of things. You know, we gain more tools, we have more insight, we gain more tools, you know, so it's a journey. So
I
we
say
have
thank you
lots,
to, I say thank
yeah,
you to the person who thanked me for the
yeah.
story. You're welcome.
We
Okay.
have questions, so let's get
Yes.
started with those. Can EMDR be helpful in healing from childhood trauma as a
Yes, you don't even have
supplement
to
to your?
finish the rest of
Yes, I
the
know. I was going
question.
to say,
You don't have
yeah.
to finish. Yes, EMDR is amazing for helping to deal with those childhood trauma, those wounds, those attachment wounds. Absolutely. That being said, okay, just be prepared. EMDR is a very heavy type of therapy at times. So therefore, perhaps the day before you go, you may not be, or he goes, she goes, not going to really be looking very forward to it. The day after, you may not be in a great place, but I'm going to tell you after that, ooh, you're going to feel so different. And as time goes on, it's gonna get those periods of, ooh, I hate this, is gonna get shorter and shorter, and the periods of functioning are gonna get longer and longer. It opens up various nervous neural pathways that are just closed right now. Memories come roaring back. It is an excellent tool to do it. Just make sure you do it with someone who's certified in the treatment, that they've been doing it for years, because you need somebody. If you walk into somebody's office and they're ready to start EMDR, run. All right, they need to be in session with you for several sessions just to get to understand your story, make you feel comfortable before they begin that process.
And I think, and I don't know if this is somebody who's struggling with addiction or a betrayed partner, but you know, you want the knowledge, because you know, we talk about, for addicts, bringing up all that, like Eddie was sharing with his story. If he didn't have the tools, what would he have been doing while his wife and daughter were off having lunch, you know? And so you want to be in a space where you're ready for dealing with trauma work, because otherwise, you know, it's really easy to relapse because you're triggered. For betrayed partners, though, I think getting the support, even to deal with certain traumatic things, it doesn't take them away. They aren't magically gone, but you don't have that emotional upheaval, or the sucker punch or whatever. It's like you can see it and you can go, that, you know, yeah, that was bad or whatever, but it isn't like, ugh, you know.
Yeah.
So it changes things, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't erase the memories.
Right. Again, desensitizes.
Yes.
Desensitizes.
So what's the next question? What about a child who has been treated like a little king? In our culture, girls are not wanted. The parents wanted boys, and after 7 girls, my spouse was born, and there was also abuse, and I think smothered. So
Yeah.
probably, yeah. So
Yeah, he was smothered. Yeah. All right. So here you almost talk about, of the 9 kids I have, that kind of entitled kid, where, you know, everything is about me. It becomes very inwardly focused. Okay, because used to people catering, people give a lot to this individual. He doesn't learn to give back. He just learned to take. So he's a taker because of that. And again, I'm just going based on this little description. Um, Again, that can all be changed, but the person has to understand what they're doing in the first place, because for him, it's just natural. It's just natural that you give me, you give me, you give me. You want something? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't do that. You know, that's just natural for them. And they need to understand that that type of behavior is really not acceptable, because again, the partner is the one who's overburdened by everything and not getting anything back. They're not being fed by this individual. And that's what a healthy relationship does. We feed each other. We help each other grow mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So that's the big issue there. But that can be worked out. But they have to, one, be aware of what they're doing. It's very self-destructive and it's selfish. And they have to learn how to become selfless.
Yeah, well, and I'm thinking, you know, as much as they're getting treated like a king and everything, they're missing out. You know, they're not, like you said, emotionally connected with another person in a healthy way. So
Right.
there's always an imbalance, you know, on the relationship, but there isn't that unique and I think ultimate connection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next
Okay.
question. How to deal with an emotional avoidant partner and how to stop and let's see, and how to stop obsess about him
How to
being
stop
avoiding me.
obsessing
Yeah,
about
yeah,
him avoiding you. Yeah.
avoiding me. Yeah.
Well, let's answer the second part of the question. How to stop being obsessed about him avoiding you. That is where you need to go talk to somebody about it so that you can start to put in proper boundaries in your life. Again, because what you most likely, you're sitting here probably trying to fix this situation, caring way too much about what's going on versus, you know what? He has a problem. And the thing is, it's not going to get any better until he takes ownership of it and decides to do something about it. This is the number two complaint that I get when anyone comes in, the couple comes in, and the partner's dealing with a sex or pornography addiction. The number two complaint is they're not emotionally connected. You know, they don't know how to engage in conversation. They're just checked out. And that is not acceptable. And that's why my big push has been lately about moving beyond just treating the addiction and looking to do the transformation of the heart. So for you to be able to go speak with someone and even a support group, which would be wonderful for you to help, that you have other people see what are they doing in those circumstances. So again, for that partner, you know, at some point to say, hey, I need you to go and get some work. There's a lot of excellent stuff that's out there to help people to learn to identify what they feel. Again, this is another example, Tammy, of someone who's very inwardly focused. I would really recommend to people who haven't seen it, go back, I think it was a couple months ago, we might have done the podcast where we showed the different negative characteristics of a sex and porn addict. And these are going to be in there. The idea that, again, just very selfish, I'm just taking and I'm not giving anything. And again, it's just not acceptable. But what you can work on is yourself.
Okay, I'm putting the link in right now for all the previously recorded, and you can scroll down at the bottom that links to even more. So, but I was also thinking probably the more you obsess and the more you try to engage with it, the more, you know, it's the more I'm going to,
Pushing
yeah,
them
yeah,
back,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Okay. And you mentioned resources. So if you're a betrayed partner, which I'm kind of suspecting, there's a betrayed partner drop-in group Wednesdays at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. Free resources. There's multiple
Yeah.
groups for that. Great place to, you know, connect with other people, get support, you know, get, you know, how did
Go
they
do
do
it.
it?
Go do
Yes.
it.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Next question. My husband has been working on recovery from SA for 10 months. That's
Okay.
great. He
Good.
started addressing some childhood trauma in his treatment, and he seems to be acting more needy again. I'm working to keep enforcing the boundaries that I need in my healing. Is this apparent?
Apparent
Is this
regression.
apparent regression typical? And how can I respond in a healthy way?
Well, I guess the question, as I read it, I get a sense that he was needy before, perhaps.
That's why I was a little confused, but
That's
yes.
what it sounds like. So that's why you're looking at this and you're saying, "Ooh, I don't like this. This is not helpful to me." Because if he's just being needy now, I mean, that's not a bad thing because what he's doing, he's getting really in touch with those emotions. But again, we got to also be very respectful of your work and what you're trying to do because, of course, you have boundaries that I don't need this guy coming way too close to me if I'm doing my own healing. So he needs to be able to find the proper outlets to be able to go and to share that sense of neediness that he has, whether that be in his therapist office, being in more of the support group, being in anonymous emotions anonymous meeting. You know, that's where a lot of that has to happen. If he had been needy before, if he had not been needy before, then I think you got to look at this and also say, wow, you know what, this is kind of a breakthrough. And this could be a positive thing, but he still needs to understand that he has to respect your boundaries.
Yeah, I was thinking we as addicts are really good at, the pendulum swing, and we kind of go through the middle where we're supposed to be on one extreme to the other. So if he's, doing that, but to the point that Eddie said, yeah, we always talk about you guys each need your own support. You can't be all things to each other, and particularly early on, when you're working on healing your wounds. There's a men's drop-in group Thursday morning. There's another one Friday morning. There's another one Sunday night. There's another one Monday morning. All these are free resources to plug into where he can get the support that he needs. He can be as needy as he needs to be in those groups, but then can come to you and respect your boundaries. Okay, next question. What are some suggestions on anxious avoidant can better move forward? I'm a recovering addict with a couple years sober. Yay. I am single, but have a prospect for a couple of years, I believe, has an avoidant or the last one you mentioned, the
disorganized.
Disorganized, yeah. I need to know to heal, to work on me, but is there any advice you can give for a woman who has been in recovery and counseling and hope of having a good relationship? I'm not a porn addict, but I have a betrayal by someone who has years ago been single for 4 years. So that's a lot, but
it is a lot.
It?
And again, yeah, the idea that, if you are recognizing that this potential partner, prospect, as you call it, is an avoidant, and you're seeing, okay, that is not going to be healthy for me. Again, this is the time to start putting up your boundaries to say, hey, I really kind of enjoy this relationship. However, there's a bunch of red flags, and I need for us and maybe you to be able to go that you can work on that, and that I can get the coping skills I need to be able to manage. But that's one thing with an avoidant, you do need to give them space at times. Okay, they have to have that. But still, they also need to be, again, very mindful and very outwardly focused to say, hey, you know what? I've had enough me time. I now need to move back out again. So I would be saying, okay, do you have the proper boundaries in place with this individual to be able to say, all right, let's continue to work on us? Because this is a great thing. The fact that you identify the differences that you each have, and then it's like, okay, how do we now learn to navigate around that? And how do we, like, I move a step forward, you move a step forward. We compromise in what we do.
And I'm going to look at, during the next question, but there's an online little test that you can take to find out what your attachment style is, and then and I was thinking too with this question, a lot of this is communication, like you were talking about, Eddie, of going like, okay, I need to step away, I need a little space right now, but I need to come back, but having those discussions of like, I'm going to need a little space because I'm a little avoidant, I just need to go take care of myself right now, but I'm going to come back in whatever time. A lot of that is just communication so that you are on the same page with, and meeting your needs, but also respecting each other's needs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next question. What type of therapist can diagnose any of these disorders? My husband was diagnosed with adjustment disorder a couple of years ago by a CBT psychologist, but stopped seeing this doctor due to the expense. My husband's current therapist is an LSW and CSAT, but has not diagnosed him with anything. My husband has gotten physically abusive. That's never okay.
No.
Since our trying to heal since D-Day, and we really need an Eddie here in Southern California to help our family. Our home is in chaos all the time due to these anger issues.
All right. So you know what? This isn't even about him being diagnosed.
No.
This isn't even about what's going on. This is about a man who's in a very bad situation. He's very angry, and one, we could never tolerate any type of physical abuse. Again, you need to be taking the steps to be talking to someone about what you can do to develop a safety plan and what you can do to put your boundaries in place. Okay, this is critical for you right now. All right, his fixing him is secondary. Right now, you need to feel, okay, I feel secure and safe. But to answer your question, almost any kind of counselor can diagnose a attachment disorder. An adjustment disorder, basically, that is the diagnosis we give to almost everybody who has a sex addiction or pornography addiction, because there's nothing else that's out there that we can diagnose it with. The DSM has not given us that sex addiction diagnosis. So what we do, we call it an adjustment disorder with either depression, anxiety, or both. But here in this circumstance, I'm telling you not to walk, but to run to somebody, a therapist, to say, and look for somebody, and Tammy will probably be able to help you with this, to find somebody who deals with this and be able to put together that plan for you, because your safety of you and whether you have kids is the most important thing right now.
Yeah, I agree. The safety is primary. And you can reach out to me, Tammy, Tami, at seekingintegrity.com. And I will do my best to help. And I just put a link. Several of you were asking about where can you find this recording, and I put the link to that as well. So, and an attachment style quickie little online test. So any recommendations for the best way to work through attachment shame? Oh, that's interesting. If our gut is telling us that reconnection is the best path for us and kids, but I fear I cannot trust the spouse, and that such a path will be a mistake.
Well, all right, for first, attachment shame, I mean, that's, we could sit here for hours and we could talk about that. I don't have hours. But let's go to your second part, that one, the fact that you feeling connection is the best pathway for you. But what you're also saying is, I cannot trust, because I feel I guess it's he, is going to make the same mistake. Okay, it'll be a mistake. And that's why, for me, what you need to see are changes beyond just the behavior that was initially happening. And that is like whether pornography, affairs, whatever it may have been, for him just saying, I'm not doing it anymore. And you need to see a guy who is outwardly focused. You need to see a guy who can sit with his emotional pain. You need to see somebody who's more mindful. You need to see somebody who is more emotionally engaging and connecting, who is more curious about you and the kids, who's diving in. You start to need to see a whole array of different behaviors that you can look at and say, oh, a transformed man, a transformed heart. You know what? Maybe I can give him another shot. But if it's just, I'm not doing that anymore, and everything else is the same, how are you going to trust? You're not. So that, I'd be looking at that, because obviously it seems like there's some good things that are going on here, but maybe we're trying to rush it just a little bit as far as reconnection. So I would say, let's slow it down, start talking more about what your fears are, making sure you're walking through this with a certified, therapist. If you don't have one, again, Tammy can line you up with somebody, but that's where I would be going.
Yeah, I was honing in on the same thing. I'm not sure that it's an attachment thing. I think it's just that there hasn't been enough to show that he's
Correct.
trustworthy again.
Exactly what it is. Right.
And so that isn't on you to be shameful about. That's you going, I need to see more. So,
right.
Okay. The next question is, do you have tips to become less selfish?
Yes, absolutely. The biggest tip that you can have is, first and foremost, one, be aware that you are selfish. That's number one. They got to understand that. Two, the other big thing is about the idea of, okay, and you brought this up before, Tammy, how much that person is missing out in life. When you just take and you don't give, you are missing half of what you can from a sense of wonderful, experiences. So therefore, to have somebody be able to walk you through, look, you know what? This is what's going on in your world that you're never going to be able to feel if you continue along this line. The other thing, again, the idea of being mindful. Once you get there, to be mindful of the idea, because you're always going to start to kind of gravitate back. Okay, it's like the childhood wounds. You're going to go back here when you're feeling things or discomfort, you want to retreat inward like a tortoise bringing its head into the shell. You got to be, okay, whoa, this is not right. I can't be doing this. I'm just taking too much right now. I need to be outwardly focused. I need to be giving more. And there's a lot of other things that they can do, but that's where I would be starting.
And the first thing I thought of was to be in, well, be aware too, but be intentional about being of service. Because if I am intentional and I have a plan, it's not like I'm just going to do something good, but like I'm intentional. I'm going to be of service, at a 12-step meeting. I'm going to do something, and I have it committed. That the more I
Right.
do that, and I go, gosh, I feel it's so selfish too, because I feel good about myself having done that. Now I don't go, hey, I did all this great stuff, I'm so wonderful. It's just like I did it, and the sneakier I can be about it, like the better I feel. Like if I can,
Right.
that and not get caught doing something good, that's a good thing for me. So
Yeah. Before we jump into the next question, the person who put up a comment of tip for continuing no contact, just add a little bit more information there for me, please. Okay.
Okay. And then about the needy, let's elaborate, because he was needy before,
Okay.
more of an anxious
Okay.
avoidant.
That,
So
that, it, that is about you and your boundaries. Okay. Being able to fortify those boundaries, keep them strong. Again, he's leaking over. And we have to make sure that you're in a good place, that you're able to continue to heal, and I'll be talking to him about, if you have some sort of empathy there, to say, look, I understand the work that you're doing. It's making you feel this way. But for me right now, to be able to try to deal with your emotional distress, I don't have that bandwidth to do it. And again, I don't want to be pushing you off. I'm not trying to abandon you or anything like that. I'm just telling you, at this moment, cannot do that. So please, we got to find a way, a source for you to be able to get that.
So this is so typical. My husband has social anxieties, but has no problem going to prostitutes and people he doesn't know. How can he be socially awkward with others, but not with hookups?
Oh, but that's, think about it.
Yeah.
You know what? There is no social
No,
interaction.
it's a transaction.
Right. It's transactional.
Hmm.
That's all it is.
Hmm.
He doesn't have to, he's not giving anything
Mm-mm.
except money.
Money.
But other than that, he's giving nothing of himself. It is just about taking in that circumstance. And again, at Dad, he's got to learn to deal with that emotional discomfort of the social anxiety and be able to fix that and repair that so that he doesn't have to keep running off to try to soothe himself for it. But yeah, no, I understand why it would sound confusing. I'm not trying to belittle you in any way. That's not it. I understand why it would. But the explanation is pretty cut and dry. He's not giving anything there. He's just not. Just like he doesn't give anything in a social situation. So.
And he can learn, 12-step meetings, the drop-in groups, those are great places to get past your social awkwardness, because you have the opportunity to connect with other people who are struggling with the same thing you are. That is a great equalizer.
Right.
Right. No one would ever believe this. I was painfully shy. I was really painfully
I
shy.
find that so hard to believe.
I know now, but because
You.
but I was, and where I learned to and it was so hard when I was at 12-step meetings, if they weren't going around the table and you had to just, jump in, I was like, I'd be sitting there going, oh, and what was the worst that could happen? I could talk at the same time somebody else did. And it happened and I lived, but I learned, and, clearly that's not an issue anymore,
right.
but I learned it wasn't who I naturally was. So,
So anyway, look, we finish up because we're almost out of time here. Hey, from heart, thank you, Heart. I'm hugging your inner child back. Also, I appreciate that. I just want to let you folks know, I was talking to Tammy before. I've been getting calls from all over the country, all over the world. The other day, someone in Egypt, Holland, Paris, you name it. I've been getting calls, and people that call them, they're looking for not just the sex addiction therapist. They want the sex addiction therapist who deals with the inner child. Well, I want to let you know that we are working on that problem because there's me. I have trained 2 other people who I've been sending people to, but they're getting totally tapped out also. But what we're going to do in the fall, we're going to launch a training program for clinicians about the inner child recovery process and how to help people using this tool. And I'm hoping that we're going to train, I'm praying to God, and I hope that you folks pray with me, that we're going to train anywhere from 50 to 100 clinicians, not just here in the US, but worldwide, so that we can bring these tools that you guys are hearing here in this conversation, a lot of the stuff that you see in sex and relationship healing, that we can expand it out for everybody, because I know people are calling, and it breaks my heart that I have to turn these people away at times because I don't have the bandwidth to do all of it. So just stay tuned, and we'll hopefully have that for you real soon.
And if you're a clinician listening, reach
Yes.
out to us, because that's great. And just for those of you, so is the licensing laws prevent therapists from practicing outside their state. So they can't do therapy outside their state, even online. They can do it outside the country. So if you're calling from Egypt or Holland, he can help you.
But right now, with what's happened with all the COVID, they have been letting us go beyond.
It
but
depends.
It's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and it depends on Georgia might, but no,
Okay.
most of the states are not. And so there's a little bit of wiggle room, and you have to apply for it. And so it's very challenging.
Yeah.
So for therapists to act within their licensing laws and not end up with, issues. The point is, we need lots more therapists to get trained on this, but he's working on it. So that's a good thing.
We're working on it.
So
Okay.
Thank you. And if those of you listening right now, Super Saturday Recovery Summit is this Saturday. Eddie was a guest last time. Troy Love, who does the 4th week on this, is on this Saturday with the group, and there's others. So please join us on intherooms.com free on Saturday for Super Saturday Recovery Summit. And we'll see you. I'll see Eddie next month, but we'll see you next week for Troy Love's series 2.
Goodbye,
Thank you, everybody.
folks. Okay.
Bye.